Hi, everyone. Today I got to sit down with Shep Hyken, who is a customer service expert and communication expert. We had a great conversation. He laid out so many important communication tips that parents should teach to their homeschoolers. It was an amazing interview. I loved especially how he talked about the importance of acting out important principles to your children and showing them how to live a successful life through good communication skills. Absolutely love the interview. It was a great conversation, and I hope you guys enjoy. First off, if you could tell us about yourself, that would be great. Just provide some background of who you are, what you do. That would be wonderful.
Sure. Well, my name's Shep Hyken. I am a customer service and experience expert. I've been doing this for decades. And I help my clients, typically companies, uh, at industry events, associations. I work with them to create amazing experiences for both their customers and their employees. I believe that customer experience is important. Internal customer experience is just as important. What
Yes.
happens on the inside of a company is felt on the outside. Been doing this a long time, worked for some of the greatest organizations in the world that I have as clients, and can't be happier. I found what I wanted to do when I was very young.
That's great. And how did you, just to kind of segue from that, how did you fall into this?
So we can go all the way back to the time I had my first business, which I was 12 years old, and I was doing birthday party magic shows. And my parents made the suggestion after I finished my first magic show. I got paid pretty well for a 16-year or for a 12-year-old kid way back then. I got $16. I know,
Oh,
doesn't
that's
sound like
great.
a lot, but it was a long time ago, and today that's worth about $2,412. But seriously, my mom said, you need to write a thank you note, even though I'd said thank you probably a dozen times to the people that hired me. Um, Send a thank you note. My dad said,
Mm,
follow up, ask them how they like the show. If they're happy, ask them what tricks they like the best. Find out what tricks they like, what they don't like, or what they don't talk about. Recognize you need to replace that with tricks they will talk about. And really, what I was learning was show appreciation, listen to your customer,
mm,
get feedback, and then find ways to make everything better, process improvement. And by the way, I know we're going to talk a little bit about communication, but it's sometimes what people don't say is just as important what people do say. And that was what my dad's
true.
message was. Ask them what they like the best, and what
Mm,
they didn't talk about, get rid of it and replace it with things they will talk about. And that way you just get better and better, and you're constantly improving. So
that's great.
I didn't realize that's what it was called. I had other jobs. I worked in retail. I worked in gas station, and I'll never forget one day it was so cold, and I went out and pumped gas for an elderly woman, and we were a self-serve gas station.
Mhm.
My manager actually got mad at me for doing that, and he said, now she expects it every time. And I go, you know
Oh,
what? It was really cold, and it just seemed like the right thing to do. And
mm,
I'm going to do it again the next time she's here. But guess what? She'll probably come back here instead of the gas station across the street. Isn't that kind of what we want her to do? You
that's
know,
right.
and I was not even what, 20 years old, maybe doing that in college
Mm,
still. And I just knew the right thing to do. So when I graduated college, I decided I saw a couple of motivational speakers, and I said, you know what, I could do that. I could write a speech about what I've learned about taking care of my customers. And that's exactly how it all started.
that's great. And then how do you kind of suggest homeschooling parents build those traits, that persistence, those good communication skills within their children?
Sure. So if you ask where I learned a lot of what I learned, I can go back and say I learned it from my parents.
Mm,
If you go to the Nordstrom, I remember this interview at Nordstrom, the department store, and they've got a really interesting handbook. They say the gist of it is just do what's right, that kind
yeah.
of thing. But
Hmm.
somebody once asked Peter Nordstrom how the employees seem to be trained so well to deliver this level of service. And his answer was, we don't train them. The parents train them
Oh,
growing up.
wow.
And it's what we do is take that and we make it
Hmm.
work within our system. And so I really want to emphasize to parents that your kids, your students, they're probably, even if they went to the traditional education, a school, they're not going to learn customer service skills. That's just not a class that's taught. As a matter of fact, in college, Not often will you find colleges that teach classes like that, unless they get into the fields of hospitality and maybe those things. But really, at the end of the day, you need to know how to communicate well, you need to know
Mhm.
how to present yourself well, and you need to understand that often, there's the old golden rule, do unto others as you want done unto you. That doesn't apply in business. In business, you treat customers the way they want to be treated, not
That's right.
necessarily the way you would want to be treated. And you need to
Mhm.
learn this skill. So I would say, first of all, as a parent, you kind of set the tone for what the rest of the life is going to be as an
Mm.
example of what's right, wrong, good, bad, et cetera, et cetera. So these parenting skills, teaching your kids to be on time, I wrote a book, which actually I use the focus of customer service and experience in the book, but it's really a skills book or a traits book on the things that you need to do to be successful. It's titled Be Amazing or Go Home. One
Mhm.
of the reasons I wrote it was because somebody in my office kept showing up late every day. And our mantra here at my company, Shepherd Presentations, is to always be amazing. And I finally said, after several days, do you think showing up late every day is amazing behavior? And she said, no. I said, you're correct. So you have a choice. You need to either be amazing or go home. And she goes, that's a great title for a book. But what I realized is that yeah, amazing people show up on time. They show up ready to do
Mhm.
their best. When amazing people accept feedback as an opportunity to grow, as opposed to a belittlement or a criticism. And by the way somebody gives you feedback may come across as criticism because they don't know how to communicate it properly. So you need to run this through your filter to know that,
That's
okay,
good.
I'm being told I'm wrong, but really this is an opportunity to learn how not to be wrong anymore, you know,
Mm.
do right
Yeah.
next time. So, um, showing up, like I mentioned, showing up on time, accepting feedback, making excellence a habit. And really, when you start to think about a friend of mine, when I was very young, he's an older gentleman. He was like a big brother to me. He said, and he used to always say, it only takes a little bit more to go first class. And he wasn't talking about spending money to get a better seat on an airplane or spending money to get a
Mhm.
better, I don't know, anything. He was saying to create a first class experience within your relationships, whether they be business or personal. It doesn't take a whole lot more effort or money
Mhm.
to do that.
That's right. I love that. And so you talk a little bit about work culture. Can you define that for people who don't know what that is, and then um, kind of give us a like 5 tips for developing a good work culture and how parents can kind of work on that at home
Wow.
so their kids
Okay.
are prepared. Sorry,
So
that's kind of loaded.
I know that well, let's start with what the culture is. The culture of a company or an organization is really when you go there, it's what you experience. Oh, this is a really friendly organization. This is one that's very technical and cold and sterile. And that's kind of the culture. And
Mhm.
if you're working for a company where they're hiring lots of engineers or they're introverted, you're going to get a totally different feeling of a company that has a culture that's you know, upbeat, gregarious. Think about some of the, um, restaurants or entertainment venues you go to and
Mhm.
how people add to an experience versus just are there to serve and do nothing but take requests
That's
and
right.
whatever. The fun restaurant to go to, a romantic restaurant to go to that's really high end and, totally, these are really, in a way, they're cultures.
Hmm.
So, your personality will fall into a culture that you enjoy. So if you are an engineer, you're probably not going to want to be on the front line answering questions from customers. It's just
Hmm.
not what you like to do. And there's
Hmm.
nothing wrong with that. On the other hand, if I take an outgoing, excited, social person and I put them in a room and say, you're going to do file cabinet work and crunch
Hmm.
numbers, they're going to go crazy after a couple of days, right? So
Yes.
personality plays a part in the jobs you like. Well, personality is also in the companies that you work for. So
Mm,
that's the first thing.
that's
Now,
great.
When I talk about creating a customer-focused culture, I actually have 6 steps that we teach executives and leadership to do. I don't know how much of that applies here, but I'm going to run through them real fast.
Sure, that'd be great.
Number one is a culture is defined by leadership, and it's usually done with a vision. So if you look at the Ritz-Carlton, which is one of my favorite examples, Horst Schultz, who is the first president and co-founder, had I use the word mantra a lot, that one sentence phrase to describe exactly who you want to be. He
Hmm.
called it his credo. And it was simply this: we're ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. That's like
Hmm.
9 words that describes when you come to work at the Ritz-Carlton, you are thought of as a lady and or a gentleman who is serving ladies and gentlemen. Now,
Oh, that's
forget
great.
about all the way things have turned. It could be they versus him, her. But in theory and concept, it was like we're really fine people serving really fine,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the definition. And when you define it, you now have to communicate it. You have to
Hmm. Yeah.
train people to act on that. Okay. And then as leaders, we must be role models. And then
Hmm.
we also, as leaders, this is step 5. So you define it, you communicate it. That's 2. 3 is train. 4 is be a role model and emulate the behavior. You can't treat people differently than you want them to treat others. Number 5 is keep your employees in alignment. Number 6 is to celebrate when it works well. And this is
Mm.
a great little, if even if it's not workplace culture, you can take that kind of formula and say, hey, how do I want my kids to be? Okay.
Yeah.
Constantly preach my idea of I want them to be, honest, friendly, on time, whatever the traits are. And then, you're communicating it well. Now you're going to teach them to do it. Now you can't say to your kids, hey, you need to be on time if you're constantly 30 minutes late. It's inconsistent
Hmm.
behavior. Uh,
Yeah.
and finally, if they're out of alignment, you bring them into alignment. And if they're doing right, you celebrate it with them. Hey, great, let's go out, celebrate. You got an A in your paper. You studied hard.
That's
That
great.
kind of. So, I mean, it
Yeah.
works on the personal level as well. Uh,
Hmm.
so, I think there's a couple of thoughts that are in there that are real important. Number one is you as a parent teaching your kids, homeschooling them, they are going to be what you teach them. If you want them to act a certain way, you cannot be incongruent with the behaviors
Hmm.
and the style and whatever it is. That's number one. Number two, being a leader is not about a title. Being a leader is how you position yourself and the way you present yourself. So you
Mm,
can
that's good.
present yourself as somebody of confidence and authority, and to me, that's a leader. And
Oh, that's great.
doesn't mean you got the vice president or the CEO position. No, you within a company. I wrote a book called Cult of the Customer, and I talk about a force within, and that's usually an employee that's inside a company where they're standing out because others aren't. You know, and it's they when it comes to customer service, they've taken on. It's like if you've ever dealt with a company where they're not known for the best service, but you found somebody in there that was really good. That's the
Hmm.
force within.
Yes, that's great. I love that. And to kind of add to what you said, you've talked a little bit about good communication, effective communication. How can parents cultivate that within the home?
So I boy, I can talk about communication for a long time. I'm going to give you a couple of thoughts. Number one, sometimes people say one thing, they mean something else. This is real
Mm,
important. This is
yeah.
probably my biggest lesson. So ask extra questions and
Oh, I
teach your
love that.
kids to ask extra questions. So
Mm, that's great.
if I say to somebody, I need this quickly, don't say, okay, I'll get it done as quickly as I can.
Hmm.
Ask me, how quickly do you need it? Because
Mm,
once I understand the expectation, I could either say I can do it that quickly or I can't. Okay.
hmm. Yep.
Um, and if I can't, this is what I can do. And I'm going to try to get you to accept it. And I'm going to give you good, valid reasons why. So this happens all the time. Why does somebody say something that they do? You know, um,
Yeah.
and the simplest example, when my wife says the trash is full, she's not looking for confirmation. I should ask, "Oh, do you want me to take it out?" And of course,
Uh-huh.
that's why she said that. Okay, but that's a
Yeah.
pretty basic example. But I need it
Yeah.
quickly. Then ask, how quickly?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
That's great.
so, yep.
That's
I think
wonderful.
that's probably my biggest lesson in communication I can share.
That's wonderful. And since we're going in on almost 20 minutes, I want to be respectful of your
Oh,
time,
thank
but
you. Yeah.
thank you so much for this and for talking and sharing
Do
your
you have one
insights.
last question you want to ask that, gosh, I wish I could have the time to do that?
Yeah, sure. Just how can we promote your work? Where can people
Oh,
find you?
I
That
like
way.
that question. You know what? All you got to know is my name. It's Shep Hyken, Hyken, and I am everywhere. You go to my website, it's hyken.com. You go on YouTube. I have more than 1,000 videos on
Great.
YouTube on how to create a better experience. And I would say if you comb through those, many of those would apply, so many of them would apply to somebody that is just starting out in the workforce,
That's great.
and maybe a kid that wants, by the way, if you take I think if you go in for an interview and you say, why you're good for the job, I think one of the things that would be powerful to say is, I have studied Shep Hyken's work. No, you bought some books and you understand part of the success of any company is how the customers are treated. And I've
Mm,
taken the time to read several books, and I jokingly said my book, but there's so many good ones out there. I've read several books and bring those books, show that they're highlighted, that there's notes
yeah,
in there, and say, I know what it takes to be successful in a business, and I want to contribute to that success. And
that's
so
great.
there's lots of videos that I've created. They're all
Yeah,
free. You go on my website, download a bunch of articles. I have a lot of fun
wonderful.
articles with cartoons. And again,
Great.
it's all free. So,
Good, good.
yeah,
That's great. That's wonderful. And I'll peruse your website. We do a blog post and then a written resource for each interview that we do. So I'll add all those links in. But I
good.
just want to thank you for your time. This was
Oh,
very
my pleasure.
informative, and I
Thank you
think it'll
so
be great.
much.
Yes, thank you. I really
All right.
appreciate it. Take care. Bye
Take care.
bye.
Bye bye.